Hello, World Economic News for Tuesday. This opening chart I'll just leave there because it's quite interesting. It's quite nicely presented by Reuters. Dark green is for AAA. Well, you can read it for yourself. Blue is the dubious people in Bs, top Bs. Yellow and then going to red. Nobody's in red that shouts out there, but quite interesting the way the world is. Where would you go if to put your money for AAA sovereign safety? United States, Canada, Australia, France, UK, Germany are all perfectly safe. Right. This second one is from the Telegraph, because the opening paragraph I thought was a good summation about what I think at the moment is going on in the wild. Philip Aldrich, who's actually showing himself to be quite, well, I agree with him quite a lot of the time, so he must be a bright bunny. According to research by Haver Analytics, real disposable income is shrinking at a rate of about 3% in the UK, 3% a year in the UK, but is contracting by just 0.5% in the Eurozone and continues to rise by 2% in the US. The main squeeze on households has come from rising prices for food and energy, uniform across the world, but the weak pound has exacerbated the problem in the UK. I think that's about right. The UK looks like it's heading into oblivion. The Eurozone is just doing plain badly, and with its sovereign crisis burning away in the background, and the US is doing just plain not very well. That about sums up the main part of the world, I think. Real retail sales, this is a nice chart, goes back to 2004. They were all bunched there together in 2007, coincidentally. So these are real retail sales for Europe and the US. The top one in green is Germany. Germany never does anything outlandish. Everything's always flat in Germany. But that last kick-up is about the wildest thing they've ever done. If the Germans could find it in their steely hearts to go out and spend lots and lots of money, that would help Europe immensely, and the world as well. Second one, sticking downwards, you can see from the clumping together in 2007. It's been downhill all the way for the blue one and the red one. The blue one's Italy and Spain is the red one. It's what they had to do. They were spending too much compared to the amount of money that they had, but it doesn't make your economy zing when you have 4 years of spending less and less money. And I've highlighted the US increase in spending. It came down from 2007 to 2009, but it's hacking its way back up again now. But it's got a lot to make up from where it would have been if it had just kept going. But it's doing better, and that kind of is another expression of how the US, although doing badly, is doing better than many other places. These are increases in credit, in billions of euro on this occasion, for Germany. And as you can see, they do everything very, very flat. Household borrowing was at 1.5, just under 1.5 trillion, and it is still at 1.5 trillion. Non-financial corporations in blue, the business that's not banking. And again, it's pretty damn flat. Spain, you can see this goes back to 2005, and it was 2009 that they realised that things had caught up with them, and they're flat now to going down. They're taking on less credit. Italy are still taking on credit, but their problem wasn't recent taking on credit. It was the government taking on credit years ago, and it still exists, as credit tends to do. Ireland, 2008, great big oops, we're going to have to do something about this, guys, and they're obviously taking on less and less credit, and their economy is pro rata not doing terrifically well, but it's not doing that badly. It's not going to hit the wall and implode or explode this year. Might have to wait till next year. New thing, Purchasing Managers Index. This is for China. I've touched on this before. You've got the blue ones, which is the PMI and new orders, the purple and blue, and they're heading down towards contraction. The red is input prices, which have come down, which is good. They've got input prices under control, but they don't really control them. It's whatever they can get on the market. But they're probably, the input prices are coming down because the world is slowing down. And the bottom one, finished goods inventory, you don't really want that going up, do you? No, don't think so. Over the sea to Japan, and Japan's household spending at the top. This is an Edward Hugh chart, so he does this enormously frustrating thing. At the end of that top chart, it looks like it goes straight up to the mid black line at 0, but it never does. It ends where it ends, and all of his charts always go right up to the top. You can see the chart below goes right to the top, and the way they start is exactly the same. So Japan's household spending is actually quite a lot below 0. It's about -3. And Japan's workers' household gross income is also down and staying down. It doesn't do that rebound to the 0 line. That's just a quirk of Edward Hughes' charts. Right, back to some of these credit charts, and this one's for the Netherlands. Everyone says how well the Netherlands is doing, but it has got a lot of debt, and it's taking on even more debt now. It better watch itself, says me. Austria, I'm not sure how their credit was before this, but you can see that they have not been perturbed at all by the crisis, and from 2005 till now they're just taking on more and more debt. And it's quite big. You can see that red one's 90 at the bottom, and it's up to over 140. I mean, that's a big percentage increase. France, again, household was very low, but that's a huge increase that they're getting done from 2005 till now, from just over 600 to getting on 1100. It's not quite doubled, but I mean that's a very big increase, and the non-financial corporations are joining in now as well. It's fine. It'll keep the economy ticking over, but is there a limit where it is too much? We'll go to this natty little paper by Ali Alechi for the International Monetary Fund, Geriatric Deadbeats. I'm going to read the whole of it because it's not very long. Old folks may be less willing to repay sovereign debts. That's the overall picture that we're going to paint. Old folks may be less willing to repay sovereign debts. As the number of old voters relative to younger ones increases around the globe, the credit worthiness of borrowing countries could decline, resulting in less external lending and more sovereign debt defaults. Because lenders cannot easily confiscate a government's assets in the case of a default, they must rely almost completely on the creditworthiness of a sovereign in deciding whether to make a loan. To the many factors affecting a nation's creditworthiness, such as macroeconomic strength and past debt repayment record, lenders must add aging of the population. Studies have shown that a country's willingness to repay is as important as whether it has the resources to repay. Like Russia, when it defaulted, it had the money, but it just chose not to. And there were plenty of other ones. The willingness deteriorates as voters age, because they have a shorter period to benefit from their country's access to international capital markets and become more likely to opt for default on current debt. Moreover, older voters generally benefit more from public resources such as pension and healthcare benefits, which could shrink if debt is repaid. If the old are a majority, they might force default, even if it's not optimal for the country as a whole. lenders will take this into account and reduce new lending to an aging country. There is some empirical support for the notion that aging increases the probability of default on sovereign debt, but more work is needed to draw stronger conclusions. Lichi, that's him himself, uses a panel of about 75 countries that have had at least one episode of sovereign default during 75 to 2003, and shows that, on average, younger countries, those with a higher percentage of people aged 15 to 59, are less likely to default. How can countries with aging populations improve their credit profile? They can collateralize more of their debt using assets in the lending country or a third country, lower the external debt ceiling, which would reduce the incentive to default, or move towards a fully funded structure and reduce the dependence on social security and old age health benefits on public resources. That's basically stop Ponzi scheming it and try and actually fund some of this stuff. They should do so as soon as possible before their populations age. I read this because not so much for lending to sovereigns, because we don't care too much about that, do we? It's important. I mean, Greece defaulting, others will default. It will cause huge vibrations around the financial world. But this is more to say it's the old that are generally in charge, and it is the old, not just on this thing of sovereign default, but for all things, will do whatever they can to keep themselves in clover. They will try and make the entire country work for them. And increasingly, I think I'm seeing that is what OECD countries are doing. They are basically trying to rig the country so everybody that's working is working for the benefit of the old and retired. But I think that what's happened over the last 30 years is they've overdone it. They have basically promised themselves far too much and have not set the country up in such a way, or the countries up in such a way, that the countries are actually capable of paying the old folk what they have promised themselves. See you tomorrow.